I have an idea. Let us reassess our values. Greetings, Chromatic Warriors! Today, we talk about values. We talk about light and shadow and how objects are read. I've had a lot of students asking me about how I assess a lighting situation. So, let us unwrap that. First of all, let me define value. Value is determined by what material it is and how it is altered by the light. Every material is going to respond a little bit differently underneath the light depending on how light reflective it is or how light absorbent it is. So first of all, let's make it simple and look at some basic shapes. The building blocks of life. Hopefully you're familiar with these. If you're not, now you are. Behold though, the anatomy of value. Highlight, midtone, core shadow, and in some situations, reflected light and cast shadows. I like this little diagram because it shows a light source coming from 4 different angles on multiple shapes. So, taking what we can see on this arrangement of shapes, let us take a look at the mannequin. This is a little sketch illustration mannequin. You can find them all over the place. But you can see it's made of similar shapes. Also, notice as the eyes move down the mannequin, it becomes darker. This is my base mindset when I'm approaching a model. I break it into basic shapes first, painting finer touches in later. I'm first establishing values with this basic approach. I look at a model, break it down into its kind of core geometry, and just shade it somewhat like the doll. The way I paint, I go through many stages of rendering, so this is my first step, just chalking up all of the light and the shadows. You know, I like to start with a wet blended base coat. That's how I'm establishing these. You don't need to be using a top-down light source either. Just make sure that all of the highlights are adhering to the same direction of light. You can see here on the mannequin, I've tilted the light to the side, creating a different emphasis, and this can also help to imply motion. Moving on, let's look at a sculpted model. Sculpted models have far more variety in their surfaces. So here we see the Lord of the Pit. In one picture, I have my light source up high and the other much closer. Listen to what the light is telling you. There are many ways to interpret the light. As you can see, well, there are 2, but there's a range between them. I also appreciate how the light collects on the bare plastic. Much can be learned from observation. You can see where those tiny pinpointed highlights will be coming up. It is of course up to the artist to adjust things to their own liking, but I want you to be seeing the subtleties. It helps to examine a model in its unpainted state before painting. I find just collecting a mental image to be helpful. Knowing what we know now, here is a Space Marine! Eerily similar to the mannequin. Well, not eerie, but you can see the approach in play. Space Marines are very similar to the mannequin. Notice the distribution of highlight, midtone, and shadow. There's an effort to create sharper, reflective highlights similar to the bare plastic. Now this is an earlier work, but we all are at a different place in our painting journey, so it's nice to see something old and then see where I got to after continuing to practice. So let's have a look at a recent project. First, in black and white. It's important to consider the overall light and dark. Oftentimes, people will choose a new color when they should be shifting deeper and considering the overall contrast. For example, shading yellow with baby blue may not produce the greatest depth of contrast, and when flipped into a black and white photo, it might not be visible at all. That's okay. I just want you to consider the shadows, these larger overall shadows that kind of clasp onto the model up from below. Those are very meaningful because they allow the brighter areas to look that much brighter by comparison and contrast. Now, that same figure in glorious full color. Here, the values are assisted by temperature, which isn't a hard rule, but you can see the pleasing effect that cold shadows and warm highlights have on the model. Through temperature and depth of shadow, I feel like I can create a deeper, more dramatic look. The yellow bounces off of the blue shadows very nicely. They complement each other. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. I was trying to pull out some things that I feel are more instinctive for me, as I'm always harping on about the power of observation and looking and replicating and just engaging with your environment, taking photos of different light and temperature situations, noticing that casted shadows can be in a variety of colors. There's so much to see out there. But with this approach, this is how I am framing things up in general. But it's my goal to have you looking at light and shadow in a much more engaged way. And as you go out and observe, it will take on a variety of examples. And just remember, in artwork, there is no law, only suggestions. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you on the next video. There are my glasses. Remain unchained.